if you really pick up a mental illness, I would say refer them. I mean, not out, you still work with them, but just get another team member with you. That would be the ethical approach because you don't want to try to not deal with the mental health issue and you don't want to end up re-traumatizing them.
What's up and welcome to the Speak Organized podcast. I'm your host, Melanie Summers, professional organizer, ADHD organizing specialist, and your go-to gal for all things pro organizing business. I like to speak organized to give you the tools to conquer your clutter, live life with more purpose, and learn all about the business of tidying. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, take out your device and tap that subscribe button so you become a member of the Speaker fam. If you're watching today's episode on YouTube, you can tap that thumbs up as you get value out of today's episode, and don't forget to tap the notification bell so that you're notified whenever we post new content every single week. If you're an Apple Podcast user, go ahead and leave us that rave 5-star review so that we can reach more amazing folks just like you who are looking to live out their dreams and run that professional organizing business successfully. Lastly, if you have not joined my free Facebook group, that's a great place to get started and get those general questions answered. The group is growing in rapid numbers every day with tons of really generous, amazing folks just like you who are interested in learning more about organizing and running a successful organizing business. I'll make sure the link to that is down in the description of the video and the podcast show notes. As a reminder, the main mission here at I Speak Organized is to give you the best quality tools and resources to help you start or level up your organizing business and truly feel confident and successful to make 6 or 7 figures without spending all of your time working on your business. So you can actually spend time with your family, work on your hobbies, you can travel, whatever it is. I am here to help provide those resources. And maybe you're telling yourself some story today, like I can't charge what that person charges, or I'm not good at marketing, or whatever it happens to be. I am here to help you understand that you can be exceptional with the right tools and training. So in just a few minutes, I'm going to share with you the ways in which I can help you get over those hurdles and punch that imposter syndrome feeling in the face. But first, let's get into this awesome interview. All right, Speaker fam, I want you to join me in welcoming Dr. Becky. She was the leading clinical psychologist for Hoarders Buried Alive. Am I saying that right? Or is it Hoarding?
Hoarding Buried Alive.
Hoarding
It's okay.
Buried Alive. My goodness, one of these days. But so if you could share the distinction between the two shows, introduce yourself, and then we're going to dive into the topic of hoarding disorder, which is extremely important. I'm excited to have you unpack it with us today. Becky, welcome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So I'm Dr. Becky Beaton York, but feel free to call me Dr. Becky. That actually, Anderson Cooper came up with that, and it caught on when I was on his show. I was actually on there twice. And so there were 2 shows that came into being in reality TV around 2009, 2010. One was Hoarders. It was on A&E. And my show was Hoarding, Buried Alive. And the Hoarding show that I was on is also owned by Discovery Studios because they owned TLC, or still own TLC. So they have just sold it all over the place. It's on Prime. It's been on Netflix. It's all over, and it's shown all over the world because I know when it's showing when I start getting emails from Denmark or something like that.
Wow.
It's like, oh, they must be showing it in Denmark right now.
That is so fantastic. Well, Becky, I mean, who better to have on the show? I've had one other professional organizer who specializes on the other side of the coin with the organizing part of it. And the mental health aspect is something that isn't well understood in our industry and just needs to be a little bit more clarity and understanding, because what ends up happening, I'll just tell you right off the bat, is many organizers, because it's an unregulated industry, you don't have to be certified. They have this passion to help people. They're good at organizing. They walk into somebody's home and they found themselves in a hoarding situation, and they're posting in a Facebook group, here are the pictures. What do I do? We're all trying to get them to like paddle backwards, get out of there, because you need to really understand what you're doing. So
Yeah.
let's unpack all of that. I want, if you would please, to explain kind of the difference between hoarding disorder and then chronic accumulation or any sort of other issues with executive function and clutter. Like, what's the main difference that we need to look out for?
Well, hoarding disorder really is a mental illness, and there's a hereditary component to it. So typically anybody who has hoarding disorder will have at least one first degree relative who also has hoarding disorder. It's about
Interesting.
84%. So it's pretty prevalent.
Hmm.
But it's much more common than people realize, the hoarding disorder in and of itself. It's somewhere between 5 and 8% of the population. The main reason why people don't see it is because they don't want you in their homes.
Hmm.
So if they're calling you for organization, maybe they don't have enough insight to realize this is really a disorder, or maybe somebody else has asked you to come in and help them organize. And so that's one thing, is they probably aren't the one who called an organizer. But
Right. Right.
they may have. Maybe they don't realize at that point that we've come, to the point where it's hoarding. I had one time I was on a show where somebody said, I do not have hoarding disorder. And I said to them, the chances are that you have been picked among hundreds of thousands of people to be on a reality show about hoarding disorder. Chances are you probably have hoarding disorder.
Right. Right.
But so it's definitely a mental illness. It causes functional impairment. So there's usually really severe relationship issues, problems with working,
Hmm.
problems with taking care of their kids, taking care of themselves, even. I mean,
Hmm.
I frequently went into homes where they could not use their bathroom, and they had all kinds of creative ways of taking care of that,
Hmm.
or they were going to the Y or a gym to take showers. It can be pretty bad, but there are varying scales. Ideally, you catch them early on and it hasn't become so severe.
Right, right. Because I know there are, at least as far as we're trained, there are 5 different levels of hoarding that we typically
Yes.
deal with.
Hmm.
So it's important to know the different stages and kind of what you're dealing with. And usually, when our business has accidentally walked into a hoarding situation, it doesn't happen as much anymore. We ask better screening questions. We have a better intake process where we can be for sure that we are dealing with or not dealing with somebody with hoarding
Hmm.
disorder. But oftentimes, what can happen is, there's an acute event that has occurred and they have to move out of their home. And so they know that they have to, like their back is against the wall and they have to take care
Yeah.
of the issue. But you can mask it really well in photos, and even doing a Zoom walkthrough, you can't always tell if they don't show you that one space or that one wall
Yes.
where
Or that
that
one room.
exactly
Yeah.
exactly where all of
Mhm.
that disorganization and dysfunction is taking place. So that's really good. I
Mhm.
think it would be helpful to unpack the signs a little bit more.
Sure.
So obviously, you pointed out the main one. Typically, hoarders don't necessarily think that they are hoarders. They don't think they have a problem, whereas somebody with chronic accumulation may know that they have an issue. They just need help taking care of it. So, what are some other recognizable signs that we can look out for to know?
When you start talking about, this is trash, for example, they do not do well with that word.
Mm,
They, they want to rehome it. Oftentimes they want to give it, one thing to one charity, another thing to another charity, or to, a long lost relative. The number of categories they can put things in is enormous.
mhm,
Whereas I know I've worked with a lot of organizers, usually have like save, trash, charity, that kind of thing. They will come up with, infinite number of categories. So trying to help them whittle that down is really important.
hmm,
But then also, they don't like you touching their items. They will start to get possessive over them. And
hmm,
if you're holding on to something too long, or if you say anything negative about the item, they will really take offense to that at
mhm,
times. And they anthropomorphize items frequently with those feeling. The items have feelings, and they want to make sure that they go to the right home, or we just can't possibly let go of that because either the thing itself has feelings, or somebody really special gave it to them.
mhm, mhm,
There's also a couple other hallmarks that are a little bit more nuanced from a psychological perspective that maybe your folks haven't been exposed to,
mhm,
where there's a lot of reasons that they come up with their thinking around hoarding. So you can tell somebody who hoards by how they're thinking about it.
mhm,
For example, they might think it has value when a normal person would not see any value in it whatsoever.
mhm,
And or it has potential. That's one thing. It can be a way of expressing their identity. For example, maybe they're the fix it guy or the person who does a lot of, crafts. That is sort of an extension of their identity. And then letting those items go means letting part of their identity go. And frequently they haven't been able to even have enough space to do the things that they profess that those things are for, or they're just not as functional to be able to do them. But anyway, that's one thing.
Hmm.
Beliefs about waste and responsibility. So it can't go to waste, and you have to find just the most, like I said earlier, just the right place to get it where it needs to. Recycling everything. Believe it or not, perfectionism. So if you can't find the perfect place for it or the perfect place to donate it, then they'll just hang on to it till they figure out the perfect thing to do with it. Also, filling a void is another example. If you find out that somebody died in the home or there's a divorce, if there's a divorce, the master bedroom will be the place they'll start to hoard.
Yeah.
Or somebody died or a kid went off to college, that kid room starts to be the place people hoard. So there's this void feeling. And then there's also another thing where the hoard actually becomes a place of safety and security. So it's keeping people out, and they'll almost set it up like a bunker. Which is really interesting. And they'll tell you certain things like, I want to clean this up so that I can have my family over. But when you really question them, you'll find out they really don't want to have their grandkids over. They, having all that stuff is a way of keeping people out.
Right. Wow. So many fascinating things that you just packed into like the last 2 minutes of the just man, there's so many different directions. I'm like, do I want to go off script here? Wow.
Yeah, you can go anywhere you want to. I'll roll.
Because as you're pointing out these different things about how people, say they have one goal, but in reality, subconsciously, the goal is actually to surround themselves with their support items. And, I can just think of over the years, I think through clients, I'm like, that person was at a certain stage of hoarding, this person, all these different things. So you just pointed out so many important points. And so you guys listening and watching today, it's good to maybe go back and listen to what Dr. Becky was just talking about and see if you can design your intake questions. If you are somebody who feels led to help individuals that struggle with hoarding disorder, there are questions that you can ask them to really get to the root of it and figure out what it is that their struggles are specifically. So which kind of leads me into my next question, which is really more about the emotional aspect of this. Obviously, if you feel led to work with hoarders, there has to be empathy and sensitivity at the forefront here, because it's easy to walk into a space and, just like you pointed out, a quote unquote normal person would look at, an empty box of Kleenex or a bunch of beer bottle caps and say, these have absolutely no intrinsic value whatsoever. But the person that is hoarding them has attached immense value to those items, to the point where you're like, this doesn't make any sense, right? So how can organizers approach this with delicacy and compassion and all the things that we need in addition to getting your support for them as well?
Well, I think one way first that you mentioned, like the intake questions, is to ask them, what kind of things do you have that you need help with, which you may already ask them that anyway. But once you start to find out what they are, then if you could ask, what meaning do those things have for you? So what purpose, meaning, and do you have any attachment to them? And what is that attachment about? Is there, do they link you back to a person, to a time period? And then kind of going back to what we said a minute ago about them actually using stuff to keep people out or prevent them from doing certain things, is one thing I ask people is this your ideal self or your real self? And I try to give them permission. You don't have to be this ideal self that you think you're supposed to be. If really you don't want to have the grandkids over, you don't have to.
Right.
And just kind of, it's really okay. There's a lot of people that don't want to have the grandkids over. Normalize it for them.
They're very tiring and full of energy.
I'm saying grandkids because the average age of diagnosis is at age 55.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Not that you have to have grandkids by then, but it's
Sure.
frequently much older too.
Hmm.
But that's usually when they start really showing it.
Hmm.
And it's starting to get dysfunctional. But going back to being sensitive is really asking open-ended questions and being curious
Hmm. Hmm.
with an exude acceptance and no judgment.
Right.
So just tell me about this. So why is this here and why is it important and what made you decide to, get these in every color that there is,
Hmm.
just try to do you use it all the time? Just like being really open-minded about it.
Hmm.
And then it's also a good idea to ask before touching, like, do you mind if I pick this up?
That's it. That's very smart. Yeah.
Mhm. Because if you just start grabbing something that immediately you're invading their space. This is their
Right.
stuff. And even though it may look like trash to us, it can be so important to them in a million different ways. When I used to teach workshops on hoarding disorder in person, and now I have that one online
Hmm.
at theknowledgetree.org if you're interested.
Oh, heck yeah.
Is when I taught him in person, I would have people take their phones and give them to somebody else, like
Mm.
across the room. And you could just see people going, no, I can't. I need this phone in case, my so and so may call me and I'm on call, or they would just start getting all worked up about me
Mhm.
asking them to give their phone to a perfect stranger.
Mhm.
Because people are pretty attached to their phones.
Right.
And so then I would just try to ask him in that moment, just harness that feeling, what you're feeling right now. Like, am I violating you by asking you to go give your phone to somebody? And let's see how long you can sit without having your phone. And what does that feel like?
Mm.
You're going to miss something. And so just helping, if any of your listeners can imagine what that's like, just imagine that every little thing in their home feels like that. So
Wow.
it brings up so much anxiety for them.
Mhm.
So being kind about it, joining with them is also really important. Like trying to find something that you like in the room.
Hmm.
So even if it looks like it's all trash to you, just like, what a beautiful color that egg carton is. You
Mhm.
know,
Why not?
why not? Have you ever noticed how egg cartons have that iridescent sort of, look about them? Whatever you can come up with.
Mhm.
I can see why you love that. It's such a pretty pink.
Right. Right.
Something you can join with them around.
Mhm.
And if you can join with them and say, I get it. I really understand. This is really important to you.
Mhm.
They'll start opening up to you
Mhm.
because they start to see that you can get it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I can think of with on a less severe scale dealing with clients with ADHD when I introduce and you mentioned this earlier, when I introduce the possibility of perfectionism into the equation, that is very disarming in a good way for people. It
Mhm.
it brings walls down because they don't think of themselves like perfectionists. They really kind of feel defeated and like they're not doing enough. They,
Mhm.
have a sense of apathy, and laziness is always kind of attached to people with
Mhm.
ADHD and probably hoarding as well.
Oh, yes.
When you say
Mhm.
no, like this actually stems from like hypervigilance and
Yeah.
discipline and perfectionist mindset. I can relate to that. I'm an organizer. Like I like to step into people's messes and like rearrange things at the grocery store. Like I'm a crazy person. And so that I have found to be a very powerful tool. It's kind of funny. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, do you find that something like that would be a good tool in disarming their
Absolutely.
sensitivity?
Yeah. I do a lot of humor.
Yeah,
You
interesting.
do, but you got to make sure that you have enough rapport before you start using it.
Uh-huh, yeah,
As long as as long as you've had those good people skills where okay, they're receptive to this.
absolutely,
Mhm. Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, pop quiz time. How would you feel 6 months from now if you were sitting in this exact same spot, sipping on your favorite beverage, running your own professional organizing business, and it was booked out with amazing clients that get you excited to get out of bed in the morning? How would that make you feel? But let me guess, there is something holding you back, right? Like that voice of imposter syndrome that whispers, who who am I to do this? Well, let me tell you, I have been there, and it is not only possible to overcome those fears, it's essential because your future clients need somebody exactly like you. And remember that I am here to help you with proven tools and strategies to get you where you want to be in this industry if you're willing to follow my lead. My brand new mini course, From Overlooked to Overbooked, is designed to help you overcome your imposter syndrome, turn your website into a client magnet with SEO strategies that actually work, skyrocket your social media presence without that uncomfortable buy my stuff energy, and confidently network like a pro, all while building genuine connections that feel as natural as making friends. It's all self-paced and comes with a workbook full of done-for-you scripts and templates that are proven to generate leads, help you sound confident, and convert all of that into cash in your wallet. And if you want to get paying clients in the door faster, you can also pick up my done-for-you Pro Organizer Forms pack designed specifically for professional organizers with 9 custom templates, including a client agreement, payment authorization form, follow-up email scripts, and so much more. You use a free Canva account to add your business info, branding touches, and then you're basically ready to go for your next project. And as a special gift for being an amazing part of my speaker fam, you're going to get $8 off both the Overbooked course and my Pro Organizer Forms pack using code YTPRO8 at checkout. All that info will be down in the description and the podcast show notes. Lastly, if you're kind of nervous about taking payments for jobs and you know you need to take cards from clients, then I've got a tool that is going to make your day. Project to Payment is my favorite invoicing and customer management tool that's actually easy to use. With just one tool, you get paid faster, create seamless professional customer experiences, and you get access to estimates, invoices, payments. They've got super fast payout for a healthy cash flow, QuickBooks integration, and to top it all off, you get the best and friendliest US-based customer support to walk you through any hiccups or questions. And there's so many more features that they have coming online every single month. You work hard to organize for your clients, so doesn't your business deserve the same? Obviously, the answer is yes. And so Project to Payment is only $20 a month, and they have the most competitive and transparent processing fees in the industry. And trust me, I have tried them all. And if that weren't enough, when you go to projecttopayment.com/ispeakorganized, you're going to get 3 months completely free just to try it out. So you're welcome. That's it. No more reinventing the wheel. These resources are plug and play and allow you to access what works while avoiding the pitfalls as much as possible. Remember that investing in yourself is the first step to showing your clients that they should invest in you. So don't let another moment pass you by to become the business owner that your future clients need. You're only one decision away from becoming booked, busy, and well-equipped to crush it in the professional organizing industry. Let's move on just a little bit because as I alluded to before, I know people listening and watching are going to walk into a situation and realize, oh crap. I mean, is this something, am I over my head? Is this a hoarding situation? So answer us this question, Dr. Becky. When is it time to call in the professional? At what point? Is it from the get-go? Like, should we be prepared walking in? What happens if you walk in and you are not prepared? What do you do? How do we get in touch with the right person to make this right?
I would definitely, and they're hard to find therapists that you have, in your phone, wherever you keep it. Just keep a list of therapists that work with hoarding disorder and OCD and even trauma.
Okay.
Because people with hoarding disorder almost always have trauma. And so there's already that tendency there. There's a hereditary component, but it usually takes one trauma or profound loss to set off the chain of it being just like growing exponentially.
Yeah.
And so if you can find some therapists, at least have OCD experience, ideally have trauma experience, and in a perfect world, have OCD, trauma, and hoarding experience. But there's not as many out there that I would like there to be. And I'm trying to get more people trained in it. So if you could have that in terms of when do you call them in, earlier is better. And I know sometimes resources are an issue, that they don't have the resources to pay for therapy as well as an organizer.
Right.
But maybe if they could trade off every other week. I tell therapists to bring in an organizer pretty early on too. So if you could come at it from both perspectives, and I hate to say this, but sometimes you really, and they've proven this, that if you can get a good cop, bad cop thing going on where you have one person as the enforcer and the other person is the support person, that's even more ideal. That doesn't mean it has to be the therapist and the organizer. You can't have somebody else, like maybe it's code enforcement, or maybe it's the person who made the call that is saying, you're renting from me and you can't keep your place like this anymore. But if you can find somebody that's the bad cop or the enforcer, and then you and or the therapist can be the support person, that works really well.
Yeah, that's really well said. I think that doing your research ahead of time and finding somebody who fits the bill, OCD, hoarding, and trauma therapists, it's also very good cross promotion for each other. You can refer back.
It is.
Networking it's huge in our industry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what'd you say?
Absolutely. In fact, I have a couple organizers here in Georgia that I've worked with so many times, and we just refer back and forth. So if you can find the therapists that are interested in working with these folks, and if they haven't had training, I mean, at least I have one training course. So, and there's other trainings in OCD and trauma and so forth that they could get.
Right.
If they're interested.
Which leads me into my next point and question. Yeah. So, and you're saying if they're interested, I'm saying it's essential to be interested. I am very opinionated about this because our industry is unregulated and you don't need to be certified. I feel that it's essential if you're going to work with people who suffer from the effects of hoarding disorder, if they're clinically diagnosed, even if you're working with people that have chronic accumulation issues, I feel as though at least some investment in training. You don't have to go to college, and put yourself through a 4-year degree to become a therapist or anything like that. But what would you recommend? Do you have any resources? I know you've got a really great training course. Is it good for organizers? What else do you recommend?
Yes, I think it's great for organizers because it gives you an overview. It's 6 hours long and it gives you an overview. And there's a ton of handouts, a ton of assessments that you as organizers can use. I've gotten some of those off of I'm trying to remember the exact name. It's the ICD. What is it? It's the International Clutter.
Yeah, I think it's ICD.
Disorganization or something?
Yeah, the Institute of Challenging Disorganization.
That's it. Thank you. I just know it as the ICD. And that's what they also have, the 5 levels of hoarding.
Yes.
They've got some really great handouts. And my understanding is they have some training as well for organizers. Yeah.
Yes, they have training for people who want to specialize in hoarding disorder. They also have training for people who want to specialize in ADHD organizing. They're a fabulous international organization that you can learn from.
And you know what I would say for your folks? I agree with you. I think your folks definitely need training in it.
Oh, yeah.
Because, they can be just budding hoarders, as we might say. And they're just starting to go down that road. But they will still have all the same characteristics where they get very resistant. And if you start pushing them too fast, too soon, they will dig in their heels.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they'll stop answering the phone and then you're back to square one.
You are. And if you can get that kind of training, so many therapists need it. And if you can get that information out to therapists wherever you are located, wherever you see folks, and you can let them know that you do this kind of work. On our listservs, like on therapy listservs, there are constantly people asking, anybody have organizers that can help with hoarding disorder? Anybody know anybody?
Yeah, very cool. That's very
so it's a great way of getting business.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, referral network is key. I am going to go off script just a bit because this is not something that I put in my outline, but I feel like it's really important to know how to keep yourself safe when you're in the hoarding environment. Because
I'm so glad you brought that up. Yes,
right. Yeah, it's something that is often overlooked. And when I speak to people about it, they're like, gosh, Melanie, I didn't even think about that. You're breathing certain things in. You may need extra protective equipment. Like what do you suggest? What should we look out for? Tell us all the things.
Okay. So I'm the poster child for this because I got a rare lung disease from it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very rare lung disease. And it came from the hoarding. So we didn't know anything back in 2009. We didn't know what we were getting into. And so as the show went on, because I was on it for 4 years, by the end, they were putting us in hazmat suits for level 5 hoarding
Mm-hmm.
and full on respirators. So if it's a level 5, you need to be totally suited up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would say always have an N95 in your back pocket. And some people feel really awkward about that because they don't want it to, offend the person. And so I say, throw that out the window. You've got to protect yourself because it made me extremely sick. And I had a 50% chance of dying if that isn't enough to scare you.
Whoa.
50% chance of dying from it. This was a disorder hadn't even discovered until the late 80s, and hardly anybody's ever gotten it. But I got it from going into those homes, so be careful.
Wow.
And if I would have just had an N95, I think it would have really made a difference. And so in terms of how to deal with it, if you're worried you're going to offend the client, is just let them know that you have allergies, and what are those allergies to? I don't know, it could be anything that might be in the environment.
Right.
I'm so sorry, but I'm really sensitive. And so these days unfortunately with COVID, but fortunately people got used to wearing masks. Although I know it's politicized, at least people know that there are people that need to wear masks. Ideally.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And just say, I'm one of those people. I've got to, I need to wear a mask in certain environments, and I just have to be careful and put that N95 on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a big thing. And I'm always, have for my staff gloves, shoe coverings if necessary. I mean, you guys are telling me full on hazmat suits, but it really, truly, if you're walking into a place that has, rat infestation, black mold, scorpion nests, if you're in Las Vegas or in the desert or something crazy, spider nests, all kinds of things. You don't want to get bitten or exposed to a cat poop. I mean, all the things, you guys, like it's
or human feces. That can be in there too.
Right, right. Because especially if they're not able to use their own facilities to go to the bathroom and things like that. I mean, you just all these things you have to think about, and the amount of times that I get on calls with people, and they're like, "Oh, I've never thought of that before." That's why we need to listen to this conversation. Very important.
Exactly, and the gloves too. I mean, I would say just put them in your car.
Right.
If you're going somewhere, just have some of the things in there.
Right, right.
And maybe even a change of clothes and a Ziploc bag. So that you leave the house, go to, a restaurant or, a gas station, whatever, change the clothes, put them in a Ziploc bag, take that bag straight in, put it in the washer.
Smart.
Because there could be things on your clothing that those particles can waft up in some way once you take off your coat when you get home, and that you are exposing yourself to maybe mold spores or something like that you didn't even see.
Right. Right. Yeah. I heard a story once of somebody walking into a situation like that and stepping on cockroach eggs and bringing them home in their shoes, like in the tread of their shoes. And then all of a sudden they've got cockroaches in their own home, however many months later when they hatched.
Or fleas. That's another one.
Yeah.
We had one hoard we went into where we had to wear flea collars around our ankles.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's so intense. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we're not making the best case, but I'm telling you, like, this is such a needed and necessary thing if you're willing to put yourself out there and be prepared.
Yeah, and if you're prepared and safe, you do what you need to do.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So going back to kind of more of the emotional attachment and things, that's probably, aside from all this other stuff, the protecting yourself physically, but the emotional attachment really is the hardest thing to help your clients overcome. So if you were to share just one key piece of this that you found beneficial across most of your hoarding clients, what would you say is that one thing that helps them navigate and hopefully eventually overcome that emotional attachment to those things?
I like to find out a motivator right from the beginning. Why are you doing this? What is really important to you? And then I bring that up. So if they feel so emotionally attached to something, I'll say, is this thing more important than your primary relationship? And then whatever it is about the thing, the other thing I love to do is have them take pictures of it. So they can still have the memory if they need that memory. And then sometimes they really want to feel it or smell it. Yeah, I learned this from organizers. Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. only
Yeah.
handle it once.
Yes.
You need that one more than anything with people who hoard, because if you set it up where you want to be like 3 feet away from them and then say, okay, what about this?
Hmm.
And so that they can't just reach out and grab it and bring it in and smell it, because then they won't let it go.
Hmm.
But that's not the one thing. The one thing is to try to find the motivator around what's more important. And then I guess, can I have two things?
Yes, you can have two. You can even have three if you really want, I guess.
So, because this really goes to the emotional piece, is
Hmm.
try to figure out which category it is. And they might have a couple of those things. It's like an extension of their identity.
Hmm.
And it's also sentimental value, which I don't know if I brought up earlier, but sentimental value is a really obvious one.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's a couple different motivator. I mean, that's a different motivator. The motivator is why you're going to do this, but let's say the pull to keep it is one of these other things that I mentioned, like the reasons, the psychological reasons for it. And so if you can find out what that psychological reason is, even though I know you guys are organizers and not therapists, but if you can find out what that is and a different way to get that need met, which generally is the thing that's really important to them.
Right. The intention is what's important, not the actual thing. Hmm.
Yeah. So say for example, this has got sentimental value because it reminds them, like, I've had people, and I'm sure you have too, where they've got their flowers from their wedding and they're covered in dust,
Hmm.
and they need to go. And so if you can get them to take a picture of it, maybe
Hmm.
instead, and so then they've got that picture, and nothing. And I also use their health. That's another aspect.
Hmm.
Is I care about your health, and we've got to make this environment healthier for you.
Right.
And sometimes they will tell you, well, I don't really care about myself so much. I'm cleaning it up for somebody else, and it just doesn't matter to me. They can be really, self deprecating and depressed
Hmm.
and just not, self loathing. So if you can show that you care about them and that there are other things out there in life that can provide the needs that those things are providing, like maybe, going and having other relationships that they've walled themselves off from,
Right.
or having joy, having, whatever that is. If you can hang something out there, like there are other things in life, that's really important, that motivator. And you can figure out that psychological issue that you can bring in a new coping mechanism for, or a new way to get to that psychological need.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's well said. It's changing the intention and really sort of like putting the focus on your relationships and things externally from the stuff is so, so important, which kind of leads me to my next section here, all about family and relationships with the hoarding individual, because that's an integral part of this, whether
Mhm.
it's the person that called you on behalf of the person who's struggling with hoarding, or if you're trying to help mend the fences, or you're trying to,
Mhm.
in many cases, try to help the family understand how to navigate it, how to be sensitive to it. So what are your suggestions here to collaborate? Like how can the organizer collaborate with the family to help out this individual who's struggling?
By the time they usually call you, they're pretty frustrated. And so they can sometimes get a little mean
Mhm.
about it, and they just don't get it. They're over it. And so if you can help them realize that they have to praise even the smallest amount of improvement. If they do not praise that small amount of improvement, then the person who hoards will regress even further.
Mhm.
They're like, what's the point? Why did I even do this 1 square foot of space and clean it up?
Right.
Or this one pile of magazines, whatever it is. And so I see so many times loved ones they'll be frustrated, like, that's all you did? It happens constantly. And it's like, you have to say, yes, this is great. What you did is wonderful. And keep going, but really reward them for the littlest thing. And the thing about people who hoard, I don't like this acronym, but it is accurate. It's SICK,
Mm.
SICK.
Mhm.
And what it stands for is sensitive, intelligent, creative, and kind.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get somebody with hoarding disorder, they generally fit that model.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there can be exceptions for sure, but they're so sensitive. The S part is so important. And so when somebody just says, that just isn't good enough for me,
Mm-hmm.
you need to like do this entire room, like I don't get it, then they just feel defeated and they give up really quickly.
Right.
So that's one thing I would say is try to encourage them also to change the way they're thinking, like stop calling it trash. Call it like, I think it might be time to retire that item, or let's rehome that item.
I like those. Yeah.
Anything that you can anthropomorphize the item,
Right.
like imagine it's a human. You're
Right.
not going to throw a human in the trash.
Right. You're going to retire it. You're going to rehome it. You're going to treat it with respect. Yeah. I love
Yes.
that.
Mm-hmm. So if you can teach the family members to start having language like that, never, 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 never clean it up for them. Family members want to say, oh, they're in the hospital. I want to have it all cleaned up by the time they come back. If you do that, you have absolutely re-traumatized them. And they're going to regress and hoard more than they ever did before. Seen it over and over and over again.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's so interesting. And if you look back in their history, a lot of times it stems from people throwing out their stuff when they were a kid.
Right.
Like military brats, they moved a million places. You can bring 2 stuffed animals with you, period. Everything else gets thrown in the trash, kind of a thing.
Right.
Yeah. So that's another piece too, is really instruct them that they do not get to do anything for them. The other piece of it, and same with organizers, because sometimes organizers, including me, all want to do it for them. I want to say, well, can't I just group these things together and then be done with it? You really want to teach them how to do it, because it's exposure therapy to have them actually take the thing and put it in a bag that's going to go to charity.
Right. Yeah. I love that. So many good suggestions. And I think the bottom line, and what I would like to kind of talk about a little bit more here too, is setting realistic expectations. That was one of the first things that you kind of pointed out here in terms of how to get the family to get on board with this, not only changing your language, but also understanding that a little bit of progress is progress after all and should be acknowledged. So as organizers, as family members, whatever piece of the puzzle that we fit into in this picture here, how do we keep our expectations realistic? Like how can we measure our progress with these clients?
So again, I would say for the people that I know that have been able to really do well and actually overcome it to some degree, it's usually about 3 years.
Wow. That's much longer than most people would expect. I would have thought like about 2 years or so, 3 years.
Yeah. So the people that I know, like people I've trained that have gotten out there and done it, it seems to be an average of around 3 years if you're working consistently with them and they want to work it.
Right.
And so just set your expectations kind of low and move slowly. That exposure therapy piece too, where you're teaching them how to do it.
Right.
Once they start to learn that they can do it, they will start picking up speed and doing some stuff on their own, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
But that also takes a certain level of insight. You're going to run into some folks that do not have the insight at all and think there is not a problem. And they may just not get better.
Right.
And those folks may need medication. You mentioned ADHD. ADHD and hoarding go hand in hand.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Because they are, they're distracted. The shiny thing over here, the shiny thing over there. And they also think that they have to see everything to remember it. So everything keeps coming up to the top of the pile. And I used to go to this one woman's house where I would bring her a huge cup of coffee. It was worth it to me to bring her a cup of coffee. She wouldn't take medication for ADHD, but she drank that big, large cup of coffee. And we would get so much more progress done when she drank the coffee.
Interesting.
Because it's a stimulant. And ADHD, people respond to stimulants.
Right.
So it actually, to some extent, it just helps them focus.
Absolutely.
So setting your expectations, to be very modest. Oh, one more thing I was going to tell you. That's another little trick.
Yeah.
for exposure therapy is, say, for example, they got a pile of magazines. And if you can ask them, will you let me take 5 of them home with me today? And then I'll bring them back next time, but just see what it's like not to have 5 of them. And that is actually a really good strategy of how to teach them that they can handle not having, that they can handle rehoming them.
Yeah. Having less for a moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that they, and they might have certain like they'll have ones that are really special, semi-special, the drill. And
Totally.
so it's like, can we take one out of each of your categories can I take one out of the, it doesn't really matter that much to me, but I still would like to have it, as well as one out of the most prized possession magazine that,
Mhm.
the real simple from 1995 that
Right.
they like all the colors in it,
Yeah.
whatever it
Oh,
might
yeah.
be. And then just say, I'm going to put them in my car. And, nobody know, I don't have any little kids or animals that are going to get in there. I'm just going to leave it in my car. I used to do this for my therapy office and just say, you bring me some things and we're going to talk about them, and then see how they feel with giving you those items for a week or a few days or whatever it is.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a great idea. We do that sometimes where I will put items in what I call purgatory, but it will stay on site.
That's it. You can do that too. That's perfect.
Okay, good.
Problem.
Yeah. Sometimes I
Yeah.
wonder though, like, are they sneaking in and,
They're
pulling
if
stuff
they're a
out?
hoarder, they're sneaking in.
Yeah, most likely. I like the idea of even taking it just a step further once you've established that bond and that trust with them to say, I'm going to, we're going to have a sleepover. It's, going to be an
There you go. I
overnight
like it. A
thing.
sleepover. Mhm.
Yeah, and like removing it from the premises and just to
Yes.
kind of see and experience what it's like to have less and know that it's actually
Yeah.
okay. The end of the world
Yeah.
did not come,
Yes.
and you can really, do this and find progress, right?
Yeah. And then what I try to tell people all the time is that anxiety, you can't stay anxious forever.
Right.
It will go away after a while. And if you could just sit with it in the moment and not try to avoid it or push it away, you'll learn that you can lean into anxiety and that you stop getting as anxious when you know you can lean into it.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So just to kind of wrap this up before we get to the fun part here, the fun question, long-term support, the ethical standards here of helping these folks overcome quite frankly, their addiction to stuff.
Mhm.
Like you said, it can take on average about 3 years of working with clients. What are the ethical considerations here? When do we know that we're doing more harm than good, that we need to pivot, we need to bring in a specialist or, assemble a team? What are
Mhm.
just some considerations to keep in mind to helping these clients long term?
If you really pick up a mental illness, I would say refer them. I mean, not out. You still work with them, but
Hmm.
just get another team member with you.
Hmm.
That would be the ethical approach, because you don't want to try to not deal with the mental health issue and you don't want to end up re-traumatizing them.
Right.
So
Right.
that's really important. Definitely get training. So you need to know what you're doing, because if you're going to go in and work with somebody with, a severe mental disorder,
Hmm.
then you need to know how to handle it gently, because these are people with PTSD. So, we don't want to cause more trauma. And then also, and they may need medication. I mean, medication might make your job a lot easier.
Right.
Hmm.
Right.
It doesn't work as well with hoarding as it does with depression or anxiety. But if they have depression and anxiety, we've at least lifted some of that.
Hmm.
And so it's worth a shot.
Right.
Oh, I forgot to tell you.
Yeah.
These drugs that are like Ozempic.
Uh-huh.
Actually, let me look at this reference really quick. This is a new one that just came out, where it's the GLP-1 RAs, has a really long name. It's a glucagon, I think, like peptide 1 receptor agonist
Okay.
that people are taking for weight loss
Uh-huh.
and diabetes, which is really what it was for.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and it's definitely, these are a little bit different though than those. They have the RAs, the RA at the end. People are finding that works for a behavioral addiction.
Really?
Yes.
I wonder why. I wonder what it's intercepting and
We don't know
controlling.
yet, but we know it's working.
Interesting. Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
just, I mean, this is like when the last 3 months this research has come out.
Huh.
Yeah. So that's just another thing. Referring about figuring out if they need some medication.
Absolutely. I feel like that, I mean, you pointed out, obviously, living in a hoarded environment is extremely overwhelming. It's overstimulating, it's defeating, it's embarrassing, all these
Mhm.
different things. Of course, those feelings are going to bleed in and compound. And most likely, I would imagine that most hoarding clients suffer from depression, anxiety, all these different things. And they may or may
Extremely
not
prevalent.
be.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, I
Yes.
can't imagine a hoarding client that doesn't have that unless,
Yeah.
they're in
We
complete denial or something. I don't know. Or there's other mental
Yeah.
illnesses going on besides that or something.
Yeah.
But
There's usually, I mean, depression correlates with it very high. I want to say like 85%.
mm,
And anxiety is just a little bit below depression.
right, right, right.
So, and they can have both at the same time for sure.
Yeah.
But maybe something like an SSRI, an antidepressant, an SNRI might really help them become motivated enough to actually do something.
Right. Yeah. And take it slow baby steps and know that they
Yeah.
have the right support system in place.
Yeah.
I mean, really, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. You don't want to be walking into a situation where somebody needs to be working with the therapist, needs to be on medication,
Yeah.
needs a safer environment, and is really stuck. And you don't want
Yeah.
to, again, start touching. I mean, that's a great point that you made. Touching their stuff without permission
Mhm.
is going to send them into a place where they're not going to want to have you back, and they're not going
No.
to allow you to help.
Yeah. And if you come across judgy to them, they're going to push you away too.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, no
Mhm.
good. No go. Do not pass go.
Yeah.
You're not collecting anything. It's
Mhm.
so hard. Oh man, this has been very informative, very special conversation. I think a lot of people are going to get some good value out of it to either know if this is something they're led to or to know that maybe they need to broaden their network, find somebody who
Mhm.
does specialize in this so they have somebody to refer because they're not equipped to handle it and now they know for sure, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
important. So now on to the fun question here to wrap up this amazing interview. If you could create a toolkit for a professional organizer who wants to specialize in hoarding, what 3 items? I know you probably want to include a whole bunch more, but if we could just box you into just 3 items, what would they be and why?
An N95 so that you protect yourself.
Mhm.
A camera. It's been one of my most helpful tools, or making sure that the client has a camera.
Mhm.
But sometimes they can't find their phone in the midst of everything. So it doesn't have to be
Sure.
a camera, just your phone, a smartphone where you can take pictures and send it to them, or they can making sure that somebody has a camera.
Mhm.
That's a really helpful tool. And then I would say a black trash bag, because as you probably know with the organizing tools is that you can bring clear trash bags in for the stuff that they're going to keep, or clear
Mhm.
totes, or whatever you want to do. But the stuff that they agree to let go of, you bring your own trash bag. If they don't have them, you have that black trash bag and you take it with you,
Mhm. Because they can't
because
see.
so they can't see what they put in there. Yeah. They don't want to take it back out again.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Oh man, that's so true. Yes. Don't
And you
bring
don't
the
put it in
clear
their trash
bag.
can either. If you could be comfortable with tying it up and putting it in your own car and taking it away, because
Yeah.
we'll take it out of the trash.
Oh yeah, I've had that happen before on more than one occasion, and that's why we started offering to do dump runs and things like that as
Yes.
part of our services because you don't want people. And you have to also protect yourself, you guys, in your client agreement, making sure you have a transfer of property clause that they can't
Good
they can't take it
point.
back from you. I've had that situation before. It's like once it's in the vehicle, it's my property to do with and process as I see fit. Sorry, like
So smart. And I know you have an excellent package of how to teach people to be organizers too, right?
yes, I do. Yeah, I am the go-to gal, especially when it comes to the YouTube universe on how to run a great, sustainable, and very professional organizing business. So yes, absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that.
I put a plug in for you too.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, speaking of plugins, I know you have this amazing course. Could be a great introduction to at least understanding hoarding disorder. It
Mhm.
can be a great resource for you. And so if you could tell us a little bit more about that, again, I'll make sure to drop that information and have
Oh,
the
cool.
URL
Thank
down there for
you.
everybody. So tell us where we can
Okay.
find you, take your course, all that stuff.
Okay. TheKnowledgeTree.org. So TheKnowledgeTree.org. And then it is under, actually, I could figure out what the exact address is. Let me pull this up really quick.
Of course.
Okay. KnowledgeTree.org/P. I don't know why P, but for psychology.
Yeah.
Another / hoarding, HOARDING. Wait, HOARDING -disorder -online.
Perfect. And
Yeah.
that is where the course lives. I'll make sure that goes down in the description in the podcast
Okay.
show notes. Everybody
Yeah.
can just click the link.
And I have tons of organizational tips too, because I learned them from working with organizers over the years, like the Ohio. And I came up with some of my own acronyms about non-acquisition, because if you're treating hoarding disorder, you have to treat non-acquisition. Otherwise they'll fill it right back up. So there's a lot of info out there. I think it's helpful for the person who hoards, the family, you all as organizers, as well as the therapist, because we all need to know all these aspects in order to treat it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And be effective. And that's why you're here. Dr. Becky, thank you so much. This has been so informative, so wonderful. You've been so gracious and just generous with your information today. Thank you so much for coming on the
Oh,
show.
you are so welcome. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, Melanie.
All right, fam, as always, that's going to wrap it up. And I just want to say thank you for spending a little bit of time with us and checking out this episode. I really hope that you got as much value out of it as I did. I really do mean when I say that I learned so much from all of my guests, and I hope you did too. If you want to connect more with her, make sure that you head down to the description of the video and the podcast show notes. All of her information and her resources are there for you. So definitely take advantage of it, as she pointed out. And don't forget to connect with me for that one-on-one coaching call and take my Overlooked to Overbooked course. Listen, you guys, 40% of people in a survey that I just posted said that they struggle with getting clients. And that is exactly what Overbooked solves for you. So if you have any hesitation, you can always reach out to me to learn a little bit more about it. It's definitely a game changer for those who take it. You can check out my Pro Organizer Forms Pack. Just remember to head to ispeakorganize.com/courses. You can see all of the different course material, one-on-one coaching, and resources that I have available for you to really, truly help you make a go of this thing and do your business right, because I want you to succeed. Your success is my success. As always, make sure that you are in that Facebook group so you can get those questions answered and be part of a thriving and growing community. And beyond that, hopefully at this point you're subscribed. If you're not, hit that subscribe button. And then I just hope you have an awesome day. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care.